Hello again, and thank you for attending the Student Support Summit. Sorry about the technical difficulties we had with the 11 o'clock session. We'll do our best to communicate those to as quickly as possible. So please make sure you're watching your emails as those come through. If you're having any difficulties, we'll respond to the entire registrant list. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Sonja Wiley. She's an associate professor in the Stephenson Department of Entrepreneurship and Information Systems. She shapes future business leaders in courses focusing on systems analysis, design, management of information systems, technology adoption, diversity, and entrepreneurship and business communications. Her research interests include organizational impacts of information technology, healthcare informatics, virtual healthcare, diversity and inclusion in analytics, business school pipeline to professions, diversity and entrepreneurship, and supplier diversity. As a self-described diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging disruptor, Dr. Wiley's service activities include the PhD Project, the Business School Diversity and Equity Inclusion DEI Collaborative, Young Entrepreneurs Academy of Baton Rouge, Student Association of Black Veterinarians, and many more. Dr. Wiley is also an African American Studies affiliate faculty member, and she is committed to building a welcoming environment for LSU students. The meaningful impact of her work is felt across campus, in the Baton Rouge community, and beyond. Without further ado, Dr. Wiley.
Should I say thank you, Dr. Kemp? Thank you so very much for inviting me today. And something that Dr. Kemp did not share with you all is that she was my former student. And it gives me great pleasure to be able to call her Dr. Kemp because she is the reason that I do what I do. I am an academic servant and I love serving the students. If there were no students at LSU, I would not have a job. And I am so happy to be here. So I also want to thank Sarah for helping with my presentation. And if you're ready, Sarah, we can go ahead and get started. I love this topic, educational exploration and maneuvering the academic universe. One of my idols and mentors for education is the late Nelson Mandela. Education is the most powerful weapon that we can use to change the world. And in order to change the world and in order for people to be educated, each one needs to reach one and teach one. And that's what I am all about. And that's what I do in my classes. Sarah, if you don't mind going to the next slide, that's me teaching my high school students. I also teach a course called the Young Entrepreneurs Academy. It is a collection of high school students, and they are 8th through 12th grade from local high schools. They come to LSU every Wednesday night. And for 30 weeks, we idealize a business. And by the time they graduate, they are legitimate business owners in the East Baton Rouge parish. So we have 23 students this semester, and they will be our newest entrepreneurs and business owners and taxpayers in the East Baton Rouge parish. Next slide, please, Sarah. So before we get started, I'm going to give you guys some definitions that Dorothy and her team have cultivated. Metaverse. What is the metaverse? What is educational exploration? And then 2 topics that are near and dear to my heart that I would like to integrate into this topic is experiential learning and neurodiversity. And then I will talk about how I use high tech, low tech, and no tech in my classrooms to actually reach these goals. And then we will have a question and answer at the end. If you all have questions while I'm speaking, please feel free to put those in the chat, and Dorothy and Sarah can get those to me and I will try to address them. So, educational exploration. What does that mean? It refers to what we do every day in our classrooms, but most importantly, what our student athletes do when they are learning to become excellent athletes. They are exploring, they're discovering, and they're using their hands-on experiences to develop an effective tool set. We use these in the classrooms to engage our students so that the activities that they use encourage them to be curious. It encourages critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity. These are characteristics that are important for our young people to become successful in life. If they are on the job, they need to be able to think critically. They need to be able to solve problems. And the most important part of being an information systems and an entrepreneur person is to be creative. we think outside the box. And this is why this summit is so exciting to me, because we're talking about the metaverses and how we are maneuvering academics in the metaverses. Some of the ways that we use educational exploration is via field trips, hands-on experiences. My classes are all project-based learning and service-based learning classes, and we do use virtual reality in our classes. I brought with me an Oculus today so I can show you some of the how we use these in the classroom. These can be expensive, but there are grants out there, and I have a link in my presentation for you guys to be able to apply for grants as you build your metaverse classroom so that you can get these types of technologies from corporations for free. Next slide, Sarah. These are some of my favorite quotes that I insist that my students use in presentations that they give. I make them go out online and find their own quotes, but they all have to do with experiential learning or metaverse learning. And Richard Branson is the one quote that I use the most, because my entrepreneurship students will say, I don't know how to do that. Well, Richard Branson says, if someone offers you an amazing opportunity and you don't know how to do it, just say yes and then learn to do it. That goes very well with Michael Jordan's Nike, just do it. Michael says he's missed more than 2,000 shots in his career, and he's lost over 300 games, but he continues to try. He continues to do. He continues to learn. And what our students need to learn is that when we fail at something, that's even more of a learning opportunity. We learn from that failure and we build upon that. One of the things that I love that Confucius says is, if I hear and I forget, I see, I remember, but when I do something, I understand. This is very important for all students, but especially for our neurodiverse students. When they do the thing that we are teaching, they understand. And that's what knowledge is all about, understanding. Einstein says, I never teach my pupils, I only provide the conditions in which they can learn. Some students can learn in that environment where you just say, I've provided the classroom environment and I've created conditions for you to learn, so go forth and learn. Some students need a lot more structure, and we're going to talk about that as we talk about neurodiversity. Next slide, please, Sarah. So this is the fun part, the definitions. What is a metaverse? Or what are metaverses? So the term itself refers to a collective of virtual shared spaces. And if you all on the other side of that screen could see this little room that I'm standing in today, it is the computer lab in the Cox Communications Student Athletic Learning Center. But they have turned this into a metaverse. There are computers, there are laptops, there are printers, several cameras and microphones, and I'm communicating with you from this podium, and you can communicate back to me through your laptops or your PCs or your desktops. I see Walt on his computer in his office. This is a metaverse, and we live in a metaverse now. When we are on Instagram, we're in a metaverse. When we're on Facebook, we're in a metaverse. When we are using our phones, we are using augmented realities. So a metaverse is basically physical reality, that's the real world, connected via the internet with virtual reality or augmented reality. And we use these collective spaces to entertain ourselves, but also to learn. And this is why it's so important that we are talking about this today, because some students learn best utilizing the metaverse. Sarah, if you don't mind clicking on that picture, I want to share a little video with our group here.
Online learning has become increasingly widespread over recent years, and finding a learning platform that is engaging for students and intuitive for teachers has become essential. Introducing Universe by ViewSonic, a virtual 3D world that combines the best of in-classroom and virtual learning experiences. Students and teachers can express themselves through customizable avatars. A variety of space templates are available to choose from based on the size of the class, seating layout, and desired aesthetics.
Did you turn in your homework?
What are you doing after class?
Like basketball, you presenting today?
Yes, I am.
Once you are ready to start the class, you can switch the class setting from discussion mode to lecture mode. In an instant, students are seated and study mode is on. How do we teach in Universe? You can use online teaching methods you're already familiar with, such as sharing a screen to present a lesson, or cast directly from your own camera. Throughout the class, the attendance list gives you a sense of whether students are paying attention or not. In addition to discussions in the main classroom, students can also be sent out into breakout rooms for more focused group work. You can see whether a group is discussing or not by the sunny and rainy cloud icons. Click on a group to instantly join any discussion. Students can also work together on the collaborative board to share and brainstorm ideas in addition to presenting from their screens. When time is up, call everyone back to the main classroom. Start a pop quiz to check if the class is following along to the lesson that day. As students start responding to the question, the dashboard shows how many have answered it correctly. Discover a metaverse built for education. Universe by ViewSonic.
And this is it's a fun application. I love using
Add new
it.
users in Universe
And I
Manager.
think if you hit escape, it should just go back to the PowerPoint presentation. There we go. And you can advance to the next slide. I love using Uverse for my entrepreneurship class, my high school class, and my systems analysis and design class. The students like using it because they get to customize and personalize their avatars. Sometimes I do have to give them a little warning about some of their avatars because they can be a little scary, but we like to let them be unique and different. And it's a fun app to use. So I do have the link to that application in the presentation. Next, experiential learning. So the definition for experiential learning is exactly what it is. It's learning through experience. And it basically increases knowledge, it develops skills, and it clarifies whatever values you're trying to teach with that particular lesson. I teach information systems analysis and design, and our students have to learn some core systems analysis principles because they're all graduating to work at different organizations as a project manager, a systems analyst, a database administrator. So the best way for them to learn and really hone in on these skills is by doing, experiencing it. So every semester, we reach out to different organizations to ask, do you have a real world problem that our students can actually find a solution to, and they will be doing work. We have one day of class, and then the next day is, we call it lab, and they do work in the real world on that problem. I'm going to share some slides with you later on, a project that we actually worked with Kenyatta Walker here. Where some students several years ago came up with an idea for a metaverse for the student athletes to better learn math. But they learned this by doing, because many of the students on that project were student athletes, and they were trying to find a solution to the problem. So exponential learning, the process is just doing. You explore and you do. You share by reflecting on what happened while you were working on that project. So that's a really important part. You have to share what you learn, and you have to share that with your peers, and I have them to share that with the organization they work with, and even share it on a scientific poster that we present every year. We do a dinner, a professional dinner once we finish our projects at Log Cook, and we invite industry leaders to come and judge our students' projects. So that's a reflective opportunity. The process, analyzing, that's what we do with systems analysis and design. We analyze what was most important. What were the important things we learned about doing this project? And then we generalize what we have learned. And the next thing is application. We apply, now what? Now what in the world do we do with this project? We've solved this problem. Now it's time to find what we need to solve next. It could be an extenuation of that particular project or problem, or something very new. So my goal, and I try to incorporate experiential learning as well as the metaverse, as well as educational exploration into all of my courses, including the principles of our next slide, neurodiversity. I think our next slide may be experiential learning, and this is a slide that you guys can click on when you get these slides. The University of North Alabama has a wonderful program on experiential learning. These are different things that you can do for your students to help them to better understand, and these are opportunities: volunteering, research, study abroad, co-ops, professional practices, even shadowing. I have a student that will shadow me next week. She says she wants to become a professor, so she will shadow me to find out what we do. I believe neurodiversity is our next slide, right, Sarah? There we go. So this slide is near and dear to my heart, and I have learned to incorporate neurodiversity principles and pedagogy into all of my classes. First and foremost, because I have discovered that many of my students who have decided to take information systems happen to be neurodiverse. I myself am neurodiverse and didn't find out until I was in graduate school. I knew that I was different. I knew that growing up, I had a hard time reading. I would have to read something over and over again, and I would have to take my finger and point to each word as I read aloud. I'm not going to tell you guys how old I am, but it was a long time ago when neurodiversity was not a term and ADHD was not heard of. Dyslexia is like, what is that? So all I knew is that I had to memorize everything I read. If I needed to read something for a test and the information was correct, once I memorized it, it was in my brain forever. And I would always make A's on my test because I studied harder. I had to read longer and over again. It wasn't until I got into graduate school that I was tested and evaluated. And my computer science teacher, as well as a educational psychologist, told me I was off the chart dyslexic and was wondering how I even made it in life. I'm living proof that it doesn't matter if you are neurodivergent. If you put your mind to something that you want to do something, you can. And I've taken that principle and I've incorporated it into my classes. Now, because I am neurodivergent, I am more sensitive to people who are. And I see people in my classes who are on the spectrum of ADHD, who are on the spectrum of autism, who have problems with light sensitivity or sound sensitivity, who have issues with using numbers. And because of that, I create my classes to be able to accommodate everyone. And when I get those letters from the Office of Disability Services, I take them very seriously. I have a conversation with my students, and I make sure that there is something in my class for every student, and that every exam, every experience, it's going to be comfortable, and those students will be able to learn just like the neurotypical students. So if you want to know what neurodiversity looks like, Sarah's going to show you on the next slide. That's neurodiversity. And you may know some of these people, you may not. That's myself and my son, who is ADHD and dyslexic, with Stevie Wonder, who is also neurodiverse. My son is adopted. So are my daughters. So is my godson. They are all on a spectrum of ADHD or ADD, but all of them, including myself, we consider ourselves quite intelligent, quite smart, and we don't think that anything is wrong with us. We actually believe that we have superpowers. So if Sarah can click on Magic Johnson and the late, great Muhammad Ali, I want to share a little video with you guys.
You know, we often think of ADHD as this cute disorder like, oh no, I forgot my keys, or hey,
Hit
look,
confirm.
squirrel.
There you go.
But I think it's important to consider why those things are happening. Especially, you know, we often think of ADHD as this cute disorder like, oh no, I forgot my keys, or hey, look, squirrel. But I think it's important to consider why those things are happening, especially if you're coaching an athlete with ADHD. See, I'll start with first. People with ADHD have short-term memory deficits. So step one, if you're a coach, you want to keep instruction very, very short. A person with ADHD is not going to hold up in an hour-long film session. You need to have very short, concise messaging. And two, I think as much hands-on instruction as you can have. Watching film is one thing, but have something where they're actively engaged. People with ADHD also may seem overly emotional or seem very, very sensitive to criticism. In short, they're going to internalize whatever feedback you give, even if it's down to like nonverbal cues like tone of voice or facial expressions. And again, I would encourage you to look up things like rejection sensitive dysphoria. There's other videos out there that discusses that phenomenon. But essentially, these are not the athletes that you're going to tear down to build up. I've worked with some coaches who fall into that philosophy. We're going to tear you down to build you back up. It's not going to work with an athlete with ADHD. This may also cause the student athlete to be very reactive to feedback. They may become argumentative or always have an answer or be super defensive with coaching. And usually it's not coming from a place
They
of that they
can't see
don't
that
care.
one?
Usually
Okay.
it's quite the opposite.
I
They
can make sure I
care a lot.
save it in a different format and send it to them. Okay. Sorry for our technical difficulties in our little metaverse. This was a coach talking about athletes with ADHD and how film is very important for a student athlete. However, you have to give an athlete with ADHD snippets of that film, as well as something in their hands to be doing while they're watching that film. Also, student athletes with ADHD have a tendency to be very sensitive to criticism. So there are some coaches who like to tear down an athlete to build them back up. My parents used to call that reverse psychology. That does not work with an ADHD student athlete. They will completely shut down and shut you out. So it's a really, really nice explanation of ADHD and the student athlete from a coach's perspective. So when we can get that, it was a TikTok video, I can encapsulate it and save it in another format and send it out with you guys. So we'll go on to the next slide, Sarah, if you don't mind. So here is the big research question of the day. How can we incorporate experiential learning and embrace neurodiversity as we maneuver the academic metaverse? And I'm sure I see all kind of stuff in the chat coming on. Maybe someone's already come up with that suggestion, but if we move on, we can do this by being purposeful and making our classes student-centered, purposeful, and intentional. Next slide. In order to do that, there are some links that we won't click on right here for times to save time, but purposeful, in order to create a purposeful curriculum, a class, or even a metaverse, there are particular things that we must take into consideration. I love technology, and I had a student to ask me one time, Doc, can technology be discriminatory? Yes, it can. Technology and software applications are created by the person who created them. So they're going to have implicit biases based on that person's background, that person's life experiences, and that person's culture. If someone who is neurodiverse helps to create a metaverse environment, they're going to be sensitive to other people who are neurodiverse. If someone who is ethnic helps to create a metaverse environment, they are going to be sensitive and cognitive of other people who are from various ethnic groups. So when we are creating programs, we need to be purposeful and make sure that we are looking at the bigger scope and why we're doing it and who we are doing it for. Planning, that's another link you guys can click on in order to make sure that your program is not offensive and that it does not discriminate and that it does reach all of the possible students that it does and it serves its purpose. We have to do particular and specific planning. That link will take you to some planning programs that are already out there. Train people on how to create equitable and diverse metaverse programs. Preparation, that means budget. I've always said when people would talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, we want to have a DEI program. I would say, let me see your budget. If there is no budget, you're not serious about it. So in order to really have a good program, a program that's going to be student-centered and meet the needs of your students and is intentional, you need to have a budget. And the federal government and various corporations have grants available. That means you don't have to pay them back. Grants available for you to be able to fund, create your programs, build your programs, and fund your programs and buy these wonderful tools and toys that we use all the time in the College of Business. There's a grant that I have linked to this PowerPoint that you guys can actually apply for online. And then programs, if you click on that one, Sarah, when we're looking at neurodiversity programs, there are programs that are already out there. And these are the top 19 programs in the United States. They are at various schools: Marshall, Landmark, Bellevue, Lynn University, Boston University. They are programs that are specifically designed for individuals who are consider themselves or who have been diagnosed as neurodiverse. And there are expertise and specialists who know how to teach us how to teach people who are neurodiverse. You go to our next slide. So I was telling you guys about a group of students in my information systems analysis and design class. Luba actually was a swimmer for LSU, and Luba and some other students in my class, Luba was a straight A student, but she had some colleagues in the class who had taken a particular math class at LSU 4 or 5 times. Or they take it and they would drop out. They were having a really hard time with this math class. And she asked me, how can we reach these student athletes with this class? Why don't we come up with gamification? Why don't we come up with something using virtual reality or augmented reality? So the students' project for that semester was to work with Kenyatta Walker and Walt Holliday and to come up with a conceptualized class that we could embed that math class into. So right now that program is a beta class that we're playing with over in the College of Business. And hopefully we're going to get some funding and continue to work with the athletic program. And we won't just look at the math class. We're going to look at other classes that the student athletes can utilize and they can learn in an augmented and a virtual reality. We're going to create our little metaverse for our students who are neurodiverse. And even if you aren't neurodiverse, you'll be more than happy and welcome to take that class. So this is a project that my senior level students actually worked on, and they did some beta testing, they did programming for it, and it's a really fun project. So I'd be happy to share that with you guys as well. Next slide. This is another project that students in my class created. So my students do all hands-on stuff. They are a part of LSU's esports program. So if you could click on the link down, there you go. This is their PowerPoint presentation. As I'm talking, you can just kind of go through it, Sarah. These are the students, and they were so happy that I was going to share this today. Renika, they have all graduated now. They have wonderful jobs. But these group of students were esports members at LSU, and they wanted to make sure that the esports group became a larger group, more prominent on campus, and could actually participate. Is it not sharing? Okay. Okay, great. That the LSU esports group could compete with the Alabama esports group and the Clemson esports group. And if you guys don't know about LSU's esports, you should definitely Google them. This is a great group of students. So these are the students in ISDS, and they worked with the esports organization. So if you want to just kind of zoom through those, that was their client. They the esports groups host tournaments, and they have local members, and they needed to have a better web space. So click on, keep going down. They met with the leaders, and they created a data dashboard. They also created an online calendar that's interactive, and they also created a web page. So this is an example of hands-on experience working on a real-world project for another group of students at LSU. So if we're ready to go back to the PowerPoint now. Thank you. Okay, this is me at the top with my high school class, but this is very similar to my on-campus classes when we don't meet in class and we have online days. Some of the high tech that we use in the class, computers, PCs, Mac, the things that we're using right now to do this conference for you guys, tablets, we use iPads and Kindles and everything. We are using a lot of AI now, and I know a lot of professors are against AI. I teach my students to utilize the technology. Don't let the technology use you. We use smart boards. We use HMDs. That is the head-mounted devices, the Oculus, like I shared with you guys earlier. We actually use these in the classroom. We use metaverse in the classroom. Now, if you see the students holding up baseballs, it's because I give them a little bag at the beginning of the year, and I have just some crazy random items in it. They don't know what it is, but when we have online days, I make sure that I develop that online lecture that we utilize those tangible objects that I have put in their bag. So the low tech and no tech things we use. Low tech, we consider a cell phone low tech now. Now, there are some cell phones that cost upwards of $2,000 and they're just like a handheld computer. But we do use computers in class. We use audiobooks in class for some of our neurodiverse students. I have a turntable where I play LPs, 33s and 45 records in class. Many of them had never seen a vinyl album before. During the time I'm playing music, I also turn the lights down low and they take pen and paper and crayon and they write in their journals. So we have Lego games. We also have mirrors and things that we use in the classroom. All of these things help us in this high-tech world to stay grounded, but it definitely impacts and it enhances our educational experience. So I'm wrapping up. This is the end of my presentation. And these are questions that I would like for you guys to ask yourselves. And then you can also ask me, because I'm going to ask Dorothy if maybe one day we can have a follow-up discussion on what you guys have learned this whole summit. And one of the things is in a metaverse, how do you create a virtual classroom? What technologies do you use? How do you generate collaborative learning and facilitate that in a metaverse? Personalized learning. How do we as faculty members personalize the learning experiences for individual students? Many teachers don't like to do that because that seems like it's a burden or an overload on their workday. But how can we do that and make their learning adaptive and personalized for our students? And then research and innovations. That's something that I would love to work with you all on. How can academics use the metaverse space to innovate in education? And then for professional development, how can we as teachers, staffs, administrators use training in the metaverse to develop opportunities that will equip us to better teach our students so that they are learning and they are understanding? And I think that is my final slide, is it? That's some links for you all. And then my information on the very last slide. And I welcome your comments, your questions, and collaborative research adventures. Thank you. For low funded programs, that's one of the reasons why I gave the high tech, low tech, no tech. You don't have to have high tech to do metaverse. If you have a PC, if you have a laptop, you can actually create a metaverse environment with Uverse. And if you are a K through 12 teacher, you can get that software for free. And as far as the Oculus that I have, I think this Oculus was maybe $150. However, Google has a cardboard Oculus that my high school students make themselves. I tell them all to bring in a shoebox, and I bring in the scissors, and we make our Oculus from Google's cardboard template. Any other questions? Someone said they made the cardboard Oculus and it was neat. It is very neat. And the students love doing it. You guys, college students enjoy doing that cardboard Oculus just as much as your elementary school students. They find it very cool. And I always bring crayon and markers to class and I let them dress up their Oculus. And I forgot to put that picture in there, but we do have an Oculus Day where they have pictures of the Oculus that they've created. Great presentation that can be implemented even at the team level. Yes, it can outside of the classroom. Absolutely. It can be implemented. Are we okay on time? Yeah. Okay. I really wish the TikTok video worked because I know there's a couple of sessions coming up talking about the student athlete and ADHD. So we can try. You can see does someone here have to have a TikTok account? Okay, we can see if share it. Okay. Okay.
You know, we often think of ADHD as this cute disorder like,
There. There. Okay.
you know, we often think of ADHD as this cute disorder like, oh no, I forgot my keys, or hey, look, squirrel. But I think it's important to consider why those things are happening, especially if you're coaching an athlete with ADHD. See, I'll start with first. People with ADHD have short-term memory deficits. So step one, if you're a coach, you want to keep instruction very, very short. A person with ADHD is not going to hold up in an hour-long film session. You need to have very short, concise messaging. And two, I think as much hands-on instruction as you can have. Watching film is one thing, but have something where they're actively engaged. People with ADHD also may seem overly emotional or seem very, very sensitive to criticism. In short, they're going to internalize whatever feedback you give, even if it's down to like nonverbal cues like tone of voice or facial expressions. And again, I'd encourage you to look up things like rejection sensitive dysphoria. There's other videos out there that discusses that phenomenon. But essentially, these are not the athletes that you're going to tear down to build up. I've worked with some coaches who fall into that philosophy. We're going to tear you down to build you back up. It's not going to work with an athlete with ADHD. This may also cause the student athlete to be very reactive to feedback. They may become argumentative or always have an answer or be super defensive with coaching. And usually it's not coming from a place of that they don't care. Usually it's quite the opposite. They care a lot. They tend to run a little on the people pleaser side, right? They want to do well. They want positive feedback. And they're going to overly internalize any negativity they perceive. So I think the biggest thing here is try to give negative feedback one-on-one if you can, but especially don't try to embarrass them in front of 20 other people on the team. But perhaps even a bigger piece of this puzzle is to educate yourself on ADHD. And essentially what we know with ADHD is that the presentation, meaning and how symptoms show up, it can come in a variety of manners. You can have the hyperactive kid who's bouncing off a wall, acting like they're run by a motor, but you can also have the inattentive student athlete who is just checked out. They seem like they're not there. They may not be hyperactive. They're not going to be fidgeting and jumping and squirming and all those things, but they're going to be very inattentive. You can have a combined presentation where they're both. So A, educate yourself about ADHD, but also really get to know your student athlete. Talk with their family. Try to understand how their ADHD shows up. So why should I as a coach take time to educate and to learn all about this one athlete? Because I would argue the flip side, the positives that come with ADHD, they're the kids you're going to want on the team. These are kids that are usually going to thrive under pressure and chaos. And one of the ironic parts of ADHD, when a person with ADHD gets passionate about something, they can get laser focused, locked in on it. Because I think we see a disproportionate number of elite athletes who also have ADHD.
Okay. And that is my presentation. Thank you guys so very much. Okay, if anyone has questions, I'm here. We have a few more minutes. I was so happy you guys got to see that video because that video is my son. It took me learning. I had to go to classes to learn about ADHD, and I also have had to educate his AAU basketball coach, his high school basketball coach. His football coach already understood it, but other people just don't get it. And he is a combination of that kind of quiet. It depends on what he's doing, or the bouncing off the wall. But that laser focus is exactly what the Mississippi State coach is saying. Once they hone in something and laser focus, they become elite at it. And you guys have that here at LSU. And I think this is just a really good video for people who are teaching and coaching neurodiverse student athletes. We're good? Okay, great. Oh my goodness, that was fun.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, thank you for inviting me.
Welcome.
That was so much fun.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Wiley.
Okay. Oh, they can still see me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
We're going to do a quick logistical check. We're having some issues with the links for the afternoon session, so please check your email. We're going to get those to you as soon as possible in the next couple of minutes for the 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 4 o'clock sessions. Sounded like a song just now, but it did.
But it rhymed.
Yeah. So bear with us. We'll get you those new links. And if you have any session evaluations or conference evaluations, use those QR codes on the screen. Thank you so much.